Welcome to the Wholesome Healing Collective.
Join us on our podcast for a journey into the hearts of healers from all walks of life, diving deep as we explore meaningful conversations that have the power to inspire, empower, and share life-changing wisdom.
Through this community, we hope to create a welcoming environment where our listeners leave feeling nurtured and uplifted. We are so delighted you are here. My name is Alyssa.
And I'm Renee. Grab a drink, get cozy, and let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Wholesome Healing Collective podcast. Alyssa and Renee here today, and we just wanted to have a juicy conversation about spiritual tools, in specific oracle cards and tarot cards. So you brought your juicy deck, and I brought mine, and we just get to chat about them.
Yeah. I love how there are so many different decks that are out there, different takes on layouts and meanings, and yeah, it's such an interesting and diverse tool to play with.
I love how the oracle cards give me such inspiration when I'm feeling just like blah about my day. Like I can pull a card and like just get a whole new perspective to my day. And even if it's like things I already know about or I'm working on, it'll give me like either a new layer to it or it'll give me confirmation. And I think that feels really cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's a great way to connect back to your guidance when you maybe feel like it's difficult to connect through other means like meditation. Sometimes if my mind is too noisy for me to feel like I can really connect inward, I can pull a card and feel like I'm still receiving information or guidance without necessarily going through the motions of quieting the mind and really deepening into a meditation.
I love that. Yeah, the cards just open up that window. And so we're talking about two different cards today, the oracle cards and the tarot cards. And for me, I would say that oracle cards bring about just a different like theme to them, bring about that inspiration, the motivation, that wisdom that is really kind of linked to the creator and the deck and the theme of the deck. There are so many different kinds of oracle cards that you can pick up one that has a specific theme. Like I have the Rose Oracle. So every card is about the rose and the rose's journey, but you have the Sacred Rebels. And so that journey is a lot different. Even though we can see some similarities in like the archetypes or the themes, I think that it's just so beautiful to have like its own essence to
Yeah.
each deck.
Yeah. I'm excited to learn more through you and the new course you're taking on tarot reading.
Yeah, the Biddy Tarot certification. So I've been working with the tarot deck probably since 2021. And the first tarot cards I got are called the Field. And I really was drawn to them because they're not a standard deck. And now come to find out, I wish I would have gotten a standard deck. And by standard, I mean the Rider Waite deck. But that's okay. It's been really great to get to know this deck and the tarot for the past couple years, which prompted me to take the certification through Biddy Tarot, which is a beautiful resource that I've been accessing since I bought this deck, is learning more about the cards, because the book that came with this card deck it's just very tiny. So you pull a card and it's like 3 sentences about the card. And I just wanted to know more, obviously. I must know more. And so I found biddytarot.com, and that's where I've been getting most of my readings, like my card information. So when I pull a card and I want to know more about it, that's where I've been going. And
Mm.
I just recently was there a couple weeks ago and they were doing a challenge. And I was like curious to see more about what that was. And of course, it led into the certification program. And my inner wisdom said yes to do it. So I am excited to bring tarot to my sessions. I don't think that it'll just be like only tarot, because if you know me, it's like full support. So it would be like a tarot and then what came up through that reading that maybe we need to release or work on or embody, and then just combining it with the coaching and the breath work and the Reiki. So I think it'll be a really beautiful combination.
Yeah,
And
complimentary.
yeah, complementary. And then allowing my intuition to continue to shine through, and allowing that the cards to kind of be the evidence almost to my intuition for me and for my clients, so that I don't feel like I am making things up, like it's in the cards, which
Mm.
feels really cool to have that tangible piece.
And how would you explain the difference between tarot cards and oracle cards?
This is what I said a couple weeks ago to one of my friends, and I'm currently sticking with it. At the end of my training, I'll let you know if I change it. But I feel like when you have a specific question, like um, would like what would be my highest? Oh, sorry, I'm like really drawing a blank. um, would it be in my highest interest to take this job, or what do I need to do to get this job, or what is it that I need to do? Like, to me, that sounds like a specific question you would want to ask the tarot, and see how the archetypes and the personalities and all of those can kind of shine through and give you wisdom in that way. Whereas if you're looking for daily inspiration, I think that the oracle cards can be really beautiful and just like creating this journey. But we did a spread at the beginning of the year using only oracle cards, and I think that was really powerful, and there was very specific questions in there. So I think they're both useful, and you can also combine them too. You can bring in oracle, like pull one oracle card with your spread of
Mm.
tarot, and that can be really juicy too.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Mm.
And you mentioned the like the standard deck versus the non-standard. Is there anything else you want to share about what is considered the standard and why
Mm.
maybe courses like the one you're taking or people who do readings might lean towards the traditions?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the Rider Waite is the more standard deck. And I just double checked. It was invented in 1909 by Mr. Waite. And so I'm not really sure where the writer piece comes from, because A.E. Waite invented the deck, and he had his artist, Pamela Pullman Smith. Um, and so, but between the 14th century, which we were just looking how far back it had been used, we're not really sure what was standard between the 14th century and the year 1909. But the idea of tarot has been around for a really long time. But the Rider Waite deck has 4 different suits, and it has 22 major arcana cards, with the suits I was mentioning making up the minor arcana. And I think that most tarot readers would use that deck just because it has so much symbolism. It has the astrology and it has numerology built into it, as well as the suits. They make up the 4 different elements. So it just that deck brings a lot of information together. The other deck I was using that is not a Rider Waite deck, I feel like is missing a lot of the symbolology, symbols.
Symbolism?
Yeah, symbolism. um, and it was just so it was just missing a lot in the details. Like if I was to look at a card, I might miss a lot of the picture, the information in the picture. where there's no person in this picture. There's no story being played out, just the discs, which is what this deck calls pentacles. So I was really excited to get this new deck from Biddy Tarot along with starting the certification. So I'm really excited to dive into um, the deck a little bit more, because I feel like when I've been working with it in my old deck, it's like, well, and I'm starting the certification, so I'm getting more and more knowledge and like putting the pieces together, but it just feels like I was missing a lot from my other deck, even though it was so beautiful.
Mm.
So, does that answer your question?
Yes. But I did have a curiosity ping in something you said. You mentioned the four elements.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what does that mean in
Yeah.
the tarot?
So I'm gonna pull up these cards real quick. So there's four different suits in the tarot, and we have the swords, the wands, the pentacles, and the cups. And each suit is a different element. So the cups is water, the swords is air, and the wands are fire, and the pentacles is earth. And so when
Neat.
you
Okay.
pull like one of those suits, you kind of get a little piece of information just by knowing which suit it was. Um, and then when you bring in the numerology, you can kind of see that journey unfold as well. So starting to link those two pieces together, that's all new information for me. I had no idea before starting this
Mhm.
training. Um, and a lot of the cards are really similar in the Rider-Waite deck and in Biddy Tarot, which is an offshoot of the Rider-Waite. So you have like the wand and this hand coming out of the clouds is holding it. And then you have the pentacle, and again, the hand coming out of the cloud. And then the cup, again, just the hand and the cloud. And it's like the symbolism is really similar. Like you can see kind of the same theme, but then the messages that are coming through um, are all very different.
Hmm. And with them being tied to the elements, does that give you an indication? Like I'm thinking about our somatic coaching and the elements of our energetic bodies. And
Mm.
so I'm curious, like if you pull a card that is the element of water, does that correlate to that quality of heart flow and fluidity and passion, and like is it kind of linked to what we would think of as a flow state or watery state in terms of constitutions or chakras, or is it completely different?
I think it's a little bit different than what we're used to, other than the water is like emotions and relationships, which is the
Okay.
emotionality, I think, is similar. Um, and the swords, which is air, is more like intellectual, like knowledge.
Mm,
So pentacles are earth, and
okay.
that is more of like material, and wealth and abundance and that kind of stuff. And then the wands is fire, and that's where that passion and enthusiasm and there was something else there that I'm drawing a blank on. That's where that kind of comes in. So then again, when you ask a question, is it job related, and are you seeing a pentacle card coming up, or are you seeing a different card coming up around it? And that can kind of just like paint a different picture.
Yeah, okay. Fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've played around a lot with oracle cards. Obviously, we've done that tons of times. But I've never played with tarot or had a reading or anything like that. So,
Mm.
which is kind of surprising considering they're kind of like cousins.
Yeah. I've never had a professional reading done for me. Um, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I've been so put off by like those signs that are like tarot reader or the tarot's in or blah. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, I can get that on my own, but more in like a way that I want tarot to be empowering and not like a tarot reader taking away my power or someone else's power. Like it needs to be like that wisdom that comes from within. And I
Mhm.
think that's why I was so turned off by it. But the Biddy Tarot is way more empowering. And I'm really excited that I picked this course because that's exactly what I was looking for. It's like we all have the wisdom to pull these cards and interpret whatever we want. But now with my training, obviously, will have a deeper level of understanding what the cards are trying to paint. But like we can pull our own cards, and it can be just as powerful as going to a professional reader.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they cannot tell the future. I think that's like the biggest thing is people think the cards tell the future, but we all have free will and we all have the power to change our future based on how we live in this moment.
And the second you think you know the future, you're gonna change the future by thinking you know the future and changing your actions.
Yeah. Yeah, so trippy.
Yeah.
Mm.
What made you decide to start exploring in this? What was your first thing that drew you in? Especially since you'd had a little bit of that.
Yeah. Are you talking
Yeah.
about this course or just
No,
tarot in
just in
general?
general, like what I'm just curious if there was kind of a if the universe kind of brought it to you as a divine orchestration or how that played out.
Yeah. I first started with Sahara Rose's deck of oracle cards, which I can't remember what they're called right now. Do you know? You know what I'm talking about? It came with like a journal, and they were very yogic and Hindu, and it was just a really beautiful oracle card deck and journal. So it's like you pull the card and you kind of journal around it and like make it your theme of the day, which really helped me embody
Hmm.
the cards and yoga and some of the Hindu, because it was deities and the um, limbs of the yoga. So the niyamas and the yamas, like those each had their own card. So it was really neat way to learn all about that. Um, and at some point after really digesting that, I was ready for something new and went to the local metaphysical bookshop in Billings and found this deck, the tarot deck I was showing you. So I think it's really important when you're getting a tarot deck or an oracle card deck that you have like a connection with it. Like your
Mm,
eyes are like, ooh, or something
yeah.
in your heart is
Versus
like,
like
I need
ordering
that.
online.
Yeah. And you might be able to see that and feel that online too. I definitely did with the Biddy Tarot deck. And I don't know if it's because I just love the graphics or what. Um, but I don't know. I love learning new things. And I think I wanted more wisdom from the cards than the oracle cards I had been using, which, like I said, the theme of it was yoga and Hindu deities. So it was like I just wanted something different,
Yeah.
um,
That was
which
kind
is
of like
really,
your doorway into it.
yeah, I think so too. And really, Sahara Rose was my doorway into all of the spirituality because I found her podcast when I was like, I need something more than just I had just started listening to podcasts when I quit drinking alcohol, and I didn't even know what was out there. But I found these two. They were called Sober Kates, and they talked about their sober journey. And then after a while, they just sounded too meh, and I wanted something more spiritual. And so then I found Sahara Rose, and the rest is history because that's how I found Sam Skelly and everything else. But
It's amazing how that like finding one person, one mentor, one lesson, it can just change the your whole trajectory
mhm.
of what you're learning and embodying and healing and all of it. It's so
Yes.
cool.
I love it. How about you? When did you get into your Secret Rebels deck?
I I think it was through pause in a very indirect way. Because they don't, teach about that in any way or incorporate. cards in any of their information, but I think it was either that or maybe it was one of Sam's podcasts where she had pulled a card and talked about the deck,
Mm.
and I can't remember what was pulled or what was spoken, but whatever it was, I think it just resonated with me in a deep way, and I was intrigued by the concept, and I've been on a journey of wanting to connect with my spirit guides for a long time and building that relationship and exploring what my doorway in is, because some people can have a direct dialogue and conversation. Some people might see images. Some people might just have inner knowing. And so you kind of have to figure out how you can communicate and build that relationship. So I think it was a bit in that pursuit of connecting and wanting to knowing that there's more information outside of me and outside of the physical things that I can read and consume, but how do I make that physical connection to the unseen? And so I think the cards just felt like this way to make that physical connection to what I wasn't able to read, hear, see in the unseen, if that makes sense. And so the Rebel deck was one that she had referenced, and I just felt so drawn to what was shared that I ended up getting that one. And there's never been a time that I've pulled a card and felt like it didn't resonate, every
Mm.
time, whether I'm pulling one randomly to just say, "Hey, what do you want me to know?" Or if I'm pulling a spread with intentionality with each card, it's always spot on for what I need to hear. And sometimes it is what I've already heard, which I find comical because I feel like my guides are like, "Hey, remember when we already told you this and you didn't do it? I'm gonna tell you again." Which is why I've pulled the world wants to be written card like 6 times. But, it was interesting. This is gonna be a little bit of a side note, but maybe it'll resonate with someone just in terms of how seeds are planted with this kind of information and tool. Um, I pulled this card, "The World Wants to Be Written," so many times, and there's so many cards in this deck that I've never pulled, so I've really taken that as a message of, "Okay, we're going to keep telling you until you really embody and embrace this." And in the retreat that I recently went to, there was a journaling workshop, and I'm not a big journaler. I journal at times. I find it really valuable at times, but I am just not someone that has adopted a very intimate practice with it. And she had us do this exercise where we weren't speaking in first person, we were writing in third person. And it really felt like a light bulb went off for me in relation to that card and that message that I've been trying to embody, to remind me that it doesn't have to be in the specific way that I thought it needed to be. It doesn't need to be in my first person dialogue, that I can write it in a different way. I can write things in third person, or I can write things from a storyteller perspective rather than a factual nonfiction perspective. So that kind of, I felt like it unlocked some things, and I haven't fully integrated it, but I want to, in as part of my integration. I just got back yesterday. As part of my integration, go back and revisit that card, revisit what was written in the book about it, and then approach it now with that different lens and try writing from that different perspective and see if I find that new stuff starts to flow through me. So it kind of
Mhm.
gave me like a little bit of excitement to just see what comes out,
I
which is
love
neat.
that.
I don't usually feel excitement around writing. It's mostly I've used it as a way to purge more than I've used it as a way to channel, but I do think that part of the message that's coming through is I had the ability to channel information through writing, but I just haven't quite tapped into it, so
Mhm. And I think we've talked about this. So this is more like a reminder for you and like sharing this for our audience. But we've talked about doing like a brain dump. So that purge in the
Mm,
writing, and then maybe some breath work, and then tapping into that inspired writing. So
yeah.
like journaling from that like juicy embodied state where there are no thoughts. It's just you and the pen, and it's just, ooh,
Yeah, you've
but
already cleared out the noise. That's
yeah.
yeah, totally.
So powerful. But I have yet to do it, so I'm just speaking from what
Reminder
I
for all of us.
assume to be true.
Yeah,
Mm. Um, but I love that new layer, this new piece of like wisdom that you got from the retreat on this embodying the world wants to be written card.
yeah.
So
I'm
beautiful.
curious, is there a particular card that in your times you feel like has come up for you more than any other, or does it feel like it's new every time?
Um, I pulled a card before my pause and breathe session today from the Rose Oracle deck that I was just showing you about. And I've pulled this card many times, and it's the Sophia card. And it's about inner wisdom and that divine plan and orchestration. Um, Maybe even stepping into that female archetype of the creatrix of all that is. So, kind of however you want to take that card, but I love when I get that card. And I think there's a handful of cards in here I get over and over and over again, not just a single one. Um, I just it's cool to read the same message with new eyes each
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, that's true. I do feel like as I've reread the message that comes through, it does speak to me different at different
Yeah.
times. So I try not to, when I do pull it, I try not to ignore, or I try not to um, let my ego be like, oh, you've already read that. You don't need to read that again. I try to look at it with fresh eyes and read it again.
Hmm.
Um, do we want to pull a card for our audience?
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you shuffle and tap in and pull a
Okay.
juicy card? Um, while you shuffle, I wanted to show my last deck. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
love Rebecca Campbell's Oracle cards. So if you're in the market for an Oracle card, Rebecca Campbell or the Sacred Rebel decks are the ones that we use. But I love Rebecca Campbell's themes. So I have the Work Your Light Oracle cards and the Rose Oracle, and there's many others that she has. So it's just juicy if there's something else you want to
Yeah,
embody.
she's great.
Hmm.
And the Sacred Rebel is Alana Fairchild, and I know she has other decks as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll pull a card, and this will just be with the intention of sharing with our audience whatever wisdom wants to come through for them.
Mm.
Mm. So I pulled the going beyond normal. That feels so perfect for our podcast and our peeps. So let's see what it says. On the path of life, there are deciding moments where we can choose to go with the mainstream or we can dare to take a bolder, more authentic and trusting way, even if it seems riskier or less safe. To rely solely on logic and science without incorporating the mysterious and magical is a recipe for an existence that is far too dry. The sacred rebel within our hearts will always choose a juicier approach to life. You are currently approaching such a choice point. You could say that the choice is about balance. It is less about choosing to honor either art or science, gardening or architecture, and more about integrating all approaches so that you enhance rather than hinder your life journey. Placing science or architecture above all else kills off the rebellious heart. Steadfastly relying on logic, proof, and a complete set of plans to measure and dictate outcomes will suffocate the soul. Basing decisions on limiting factors with an imbalanced measure of success is unnecessarily limiting. This approach prevents us from living freely, spontaneously, and with trust so that we can rebel against the need for things to go strictly according to plan. Choose to value decisions based on passion and instinct and trust in life enough to embrace it as an adventure and let it unfold as it will. There is a time and place for logic, strategy, planning, and measurable outcomes. There are not bad tools. They are not bad tools to have, but we must be vigilant not to worship them or allow them to quash our less rational but equally valuable decision making tools, intuition, feeling, and those things you know without knowing how you know. The flowing, inspirational energy of the heart may have no conceivable basis in logic or reason and still be uncannily accurate. To remain rebellious, we must not sacrifice the art of emotion, instinct, passion, and intuition for the science of logic and strict planning. For, on the other hand, gardening and art do provide us with a plan, albeit more loosely held. This plan still requires us to set aside time, to draw upon reliable methods, and to prepare with certain tools. However, there is also a healthy dose of organic flow, responsiveness, and trust in the creative process of bringing something to life. This leads to the cultivation of the most beautiful, abundant, and successful garden and the most vivid healing art. You are being asked to stay open to the intuitive approach in your life, your work, your creativity, as well as in your spiritual journey. The intuitive approach can be likened to the method of a gardener or an artist. There is a sense of what might work, there is a sense of what might work, where, and a loose or even a detailed plan, but how the plan is carried out will depend on and respond to the flow of its surroundings. There is no need to control the situation, but rather a desire to nurture an idea to fruition. You may have pressures around you from the world or from your own conditioned nature to do things according to the rules, to a deadline, or to the accepted mainstream view that you need a well thought out plan for success in a commercial venture. However, sometimes the best plan is to do what feels intuitively truthful in the moment and to trust that you are being led towards your own growth. Adopting this approach means you have to do far less planning and far more living. It is a pure and heart-centered way to manifest your art, your life path, and your essence into practical expression in the world. It involves a willingness to be led by nature instead of trying to control the powerful force of life, which is a bit like trying to fit a proverbial ocean into a teacup. It is far more intelligent to allow the ocean to be the ocean and to learn to swim in it rather than trying to cram it into a vessel that is much too small. This oracle brings you a special piece of guidance. You are moving outside of the plan. You are living on the border of what is socially accepted. This is good. This is fringe dwelling freedom. Offers might not see, or sorry, Others might not see this about you straight away as you seem pretty normal, but the secret eccentric streak is just waiting to show itself. And maybe you are an out and proud fringe dweller, completely comfortable with this way of being. Either way, this oracle brings you the message that you now have a chance to live from the heart more deeply and expressively than ever before. It wants you to realize that this is a legitimate, empowered, and creative way to live that honors all of who you are. You can give up forcing and squashing yourself down into a very limited set of so called desirable qualities like intellect and control. If you are yet to relate to this consciously, this oracle brings you the further message that you are going to be breaking with tradition. Perhaps not entirely, but at least in a way that is meaningful to you. This will require you to have courage in your convictions and faith in your heart's truth. This will help you and inspire others around you to step out of fear and live more freely and lovingly. You are not necessarily meant to abandon logic and intellect altogether. You are to use them to serve the desires of the heart rather than to replace it naturally, spontaneously, and truthful nature will controlled planning and narrow strategy. I feel like I need to read that sentence again. You are to use them to serve others. You are to use them to serve the desires of the heart rather than to replace its naturally spontaneous and truthful nature with controlled planning and narrow strategy. It's time to get a bit wild and let nature take its course.
That was so juicy. I'm
That
feeling
was.
a lot of like feminine, like the flow, the nature, like breaking free from the structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
breaking free from the structure. I love that. And that was actually a bit longer of a explanation than a lot of the cards have.
Mm,
So it must have been needed, a needed message for everyone listening.
yeah. And so it can be so fun to like pull a card, read about it, and journal about it, about like what in that description felt true for you. Like there was a lot there, and it may only be like one sentence or a paragraph that like is what you absolutely need to hear, or that you may hear different every time is a different sentence or paragraph. Um, And if you don't have time to read all of those pages, just simply looking at that picture and noticing what your intuition wants to say through the picture can be really powerful too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like to pay attention to as I'm reading those things, what sensations come alive in the body. Sometimes we can read something and it kind of ignites this feeling of resonance, like, oh, that's so true. And I do this because I feel that in my throat. But there might also be something that you read where you feel a contraction in the body. And maybe an area where there's a little bit of resistance or a part of you that doesn't believe that, or that conditioned part of you that's like, "Oh, whatever." So that's a good indication of what to explore too, not with any bit of judgment or trying to change what is coming up, but just getting curious of, "Oh, that's so interesting that I feel this contraction when I read about freedom or living on the fringes. Why is that? Where does that come from? What conditioning has led me to that?" And that can be really revealing, especially if the resistance or beliefs aren't yours and they're adopted from our caregivers, our society, our culture, whatever. It can kind of lead you into that question of, oh, okay, I've revealed this belief in myself. Is that mine? Do I want it to be mine? And sometimes those points of resistance can be released when they're not ours, and we can come to that awareness.
I love that. I think that was such a powerful like expansion on the wisdom of the cards and how they can really be a spiritual tool that we can use daily or weekly, monthly, or with the moons, full moon, new moon. Before we wrap this up, I'd love to touch on your favorite spread.
My favorite spread. Well, I actually really like your spread that you use often of pulling 3 cards and asking 1 to show you what you need to see, 1 to show you what you need to embody, and 1 to show you what you need to integrate. If I'm going to pull multiple cards, I really like that one. There's so many different layouts that you can find. And with this particular deck, because there usually is a couple of pages to read for each card, I don't normally do more than 3, unless I'm doing something like a New Year's process where I'm making more of a um uh what's the word I'm trying to use?
The word fuss comes to mind.
Yeah, yeah, or just like, yeah, making, yeah, a fuss about it. Making it more or making it be a whole process. But I will often pull just 1 card, and I usually will do a little bit of breath. I'll drop in, I'll ask for my spirit guides to be present, and I'll just ask them if I don't have something in particular that I'm wanting guidance on, I'll just ask them, what do you want? What should I know today? Or um, what would be in the interest of my highest self to learn? And I just let the cards speak to me and I just do 1. Sometimes if I have something going on in particular, like if it's my business or something like that, I might hone it in a little bit, but more often than not, I keep it pretty general and just ask for my guides to show me what I'm meant to learn or know or feel.
I love that. Mhm.
How about you?
Yeah. I really like the 3 cards I do.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like it just sums it all up. The 10 card spread, was it just 10? I feel like it might have been more, that we did at the beginning of the year was really cool to see all of
Yeah.
those cards come through.
That was really cool. And they did very much so speak to each of the intentions that we
Yeah.
pulled each card for, which I really liked. But yeah, that took us like what, an hour and a half to go through.
Yeah. Especially with your book of like reading through and pulling like that message out. Um, I'd love to also touch on, you talked about inviting in your spirit guides. I typically I invite my whole team when I pull a card. So my angels, my guides, my any mentors I'm working with, and my highest self. So like bringing all of that in and then asking, what is it that I need to see, embody, integrate for my highest good and the highest good of all. I always declare that only those interested in my highest good and the highest good of all are welcome in my
Mhm.
space. And I always open up sacred space with a candle and blow out the candle when I'm done. It just like really sets like that this is a sacred time and that it's intentional instead of like rushing through, shuffling my card, pulling one, and then like running out the door with my card. Like that doesn't
Yeah.
feel as sacred.
Yeah.
So even if it just is like 5 minutes where you can pause for 1 second to pull a card and get the message that you need, even if it's just looking at the card and being curious about what the card says to you without having to read the book, if that's all the time you have, and then like marinating on the wisdom of the card all throughout the day.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's just such a it's such a powerful spiritual tool. And I love having access to my intuition and to my guides in that way.
Yeah, me too. I've never once pulled a card and been like, that doesn't apply. It's
Yeah.
always spot on.
Yeah. In our last episode, I mentioned I pulled the Tower card, and this is a more like negative looking card. that a lot of people would be like, kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, my world's gonna crumble and there's gonna be a
Yeah.
fire. And it's not a happy looking card. But
Yeah.
if you pull a more negative card, just trying to see what the light is, like the flip side, and like acknowledging the shadow and what good can come from a more negative looking card. Like you said, bringing, like, taking your ego out of it and really allowing the wisdom to come through. I think having that open and curious mindset helps you to resonate with your cards and to find the wisdom versus getting this card and being like, I'm not a fool, and then putting the cards away when the fool has so much more to say. So it's just that funny piece of like being open and curious and allowing the wisdom to speak through you.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the tarot cards, invite us to go deeper than the oracle cards, where a lot of them you can look at the picture, look at the message on the card, and you can get a lot from that without having to read it, versus the tarot cards where you're going to gain way more if you take the time to actually reflect and read through
Mhm.
what that could be sharing with you.
Potentially. So I feel like once I have all of these cards memorized, I won't even need to look at a book because I'll
Totally.
know what they're trying to say. But it's like then allowing there to be room for all of the unspoken things to make their way through. But upfront, I do feel like it is a bit of studying, and then I'll have like that storage of information I can pull from if I need it, but really just allowing like the intuition to flow.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of symbolism and story and themes and archetypes that are like really just baked into the deck. And so there's a lot there to learn.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a fun journey for you to take us and our listeners on as you learn more in your course.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe when I get better, I'll pull a spread
Yeah.
and know what it says. On air, on like live,
Yeah.
not live, but not like pausing to read and feel into it for 30 minutes. So,
Yeah. Totally.
yeah, amazing. What a juicy conversation.
Yeah. Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah. And to our listeners, if there's anything you'd like us to talk about or explore, let us know. Drop it in the comments. We'd love to be inspired by whatever it is you want to bring to us.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for watching. We hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day. We'll see you again next time.